Christina Spaulding is an international SEO specialist who focuses on the power of localization in marketing. In this episode, we're going to focus on why companies and marketers struggle to make their content not just visible, but truly understood across different languages and markets, and importantly, what they can do to rectify this challenge. We're going to explore how to roll out content strategy that connects with local users wherever you are targeting. Christina, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Neil, for having me.
That's a big start, isn't it? I've kind of promised a lot there with that little introduction. Can we deliver, do you think?
Yeah, I think we can.
Good. Right, let's start. Right. We are, aren't we? We're going to start right back at the beginning, because I guess in these kind of markets that most people, most of my audience listening and watching this, they have complex markets. You know, it isn't just one local audience. They are looking across different time zones, different continents, and probably different languages as well. So when you start off with your own local market, it's in relative terms, it's easy, isn't it? Because you probably know your audience quite well. How do you then take or begin to take that next step in terms of considering maybe a relevant international market, but begin to kind of tease out kind of what they're talking about and how they're talking and kind of what they're looking for?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of times marketers who are looking to get into another country kind of jump in feet first and say, okay, I'm just going to translate my content and it's going to work. And then it doesn't. And they're like, it didn't work. We're not adapted for this market. Well, doing the research first is incredibly helpful. And it might be a little bit frustrating when you've spent a lot of time creating your ideal client profile in your home market, and then realizing that you have to do that whole process all over again for another market, whether that's a market that speaks the same language but is a different country. US versus UK consumers or clients are different. We approach business differently. We approach shopping differently. We approach subscriptions a little bit differently. So you really have to, even though we speak the same language-ish, we consume differently, we buy differently. There's different priorities versus a British customer and a US customer or a Canadian customer. So it helps if you're seeing demand come in from somewhere, or you've decided on a strategic target, to really do the research and understand the market you're entering and the consumer or customer that you're talking to. I've done a lot of work with German-speaking companies. I speak fluent German, I speak French. And US companies that are looking to enter the German market sometimes don't realize just how dramatically different the culture is, the competitive landscape is, priorities to German customers are different than American customer priorities. Or the priority is the same, but it expresses itself differently. I was working for a US company that had affiliate marketing for online casinos. And they had a really great US presence. And they expanded into German, and they just translated their US content. What they neglected to understand or research was that on top of the major slot machine manufacturers that exist worldwide, Germany has an integrated manufacture and distribution concept for like slot parlors, so small, teeny tiny mini casinos that go in retail storefronts. Those never pop up in worldwide discourse on casinos because it's exclusive to the DACH region, the DACH region. So we weren't covering any of that. When we decided to cover that, all of a sudden traffic increased to the site and people started looking at online casinos instead of going down to their local Spielothek. So it's understanding the market that you're heading into And then understanding the customer as well. So maybe you've done your research and you're already internationally active. You know that you're a UK company and you're entering the US market. You know that the structure is dramatically different. Your competition is different. You've already done that bit of research. Then it's understanding how your ideal client profile is different from the UK to the US. A US customer may be more price sensitive and less quality sensitive. A US customer may look for larger portion sizes. A US customer absolutely is used to a different weight and measurement system. So all these small little things you do have to take into consideration. If you're going to Canada, the differences are a little bit less. They use metric more often. They're much more fluent with that. So then it's really about what are Canadian customer priorities versus UK customer priorities. And it's different for every product. A lot of times, 99% of it is the same. But there's one little thing where you find, a Canadian customer really values longevity more than a UK customer, for example. Then you can make subtle changes to your marketing to highlight those specific pain points that your non-local customer has a higher interest in.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, there's real kind of subtleties in here, aren't there? That it would be so easy to miss, which is, I guess, the biggest challenge is, I never realized, or, we've kind of entered this market, or we think we've entered this market, and yet people are going only so far in the buyer journey, and then we lose them. We don't know why. And it could be something so subtle that, if you're not doing the research, you could completely and utterly overlook. And this is complicated, isn't it? Really, is what we're saying, is that you can't make any assumptions, because the lazy marketer, lazy business is just going to assume that everything is going to apply there as it does locally. So, I mean, where do you begin the research? Is it about getting kind of trusted partners in the country, or is it kind of physically going there yourself? I mean, kind of where do you begin?
There's a lot of ways to begin. You can start with some online research. You get your basic data about the country you're looking to enter, population centers, requirements for doing business. Is my product legal in that country? Is the way I sell it legal in that country? Stupid questions, right? Is my product legal while I sell it here? Of course it's legal everywhere. There's a sunscreen manufacturer here in Las Vegas, and we were having a conversation about, where are you looking to export your product? Because she had indicated already that she was looking to export. And she's like, well, not Germany. And I said, oh, okay. She said the rules for sunscreen and like cosmetic type products, things that go on your face, are really high in Germany specifically. So that was kind of out the door from the get-go. And I said, okay, well, where are you looking to go? And she mentioned a few other countries, but she had been able to find, hey, from a import-export, is my item legal? Yes, it is legal to sell sunscreen in Germany, but you have to go through a specific certification process, and she didn't want to put the money into that process at that point. So if you have anything that goes in or on a human body, if you're a food product, a cosmetic product, there's a whole fun set of rules for you. If you are a knowledge product, if you have a course, then things get a whole lot easier. If you're a consultant, a whole lot easier. But if you have a subscription, different countries have different rules about how you present and end subscriptions. So you want to make sure that you are compliant with local regulations, and that kind of stuff you can look up in advance.
Is this where kind of AI would sort of slot in quite nicely? Because with ChatGPT, but potentially something like Perplexity, which can do obviously very deep research, that would feel like a good kind of way of understanding those sort of legalities and also regulations locally as well. So it might not be you absolutely can't enter this market, but actually, as you say, there are certain kind of regulations that are going to control or police how you do it. And obviously AI can then give us that access without necessarily having to go to market.
Absolutely. That's actually a fantastic use case for AI. Hey, create a country profile for my product. Here's the things. You could even ask it something like, where would be the first steps for me to go? Some folks use AI for customer modeling. For me, that's how much confidence do you have in AI? And it's been suggested that folks can use it for international customer modeling, because you do have these large amounts of information from different sources. So feel free to try that out. But my approach to AI is the very German approach of trust but verify. So when it comes to international customer profiles, LLMs leverage existing content. Most of that content is in English. So half of the web is English. If you are saying, hey, can you profile a Japanese runner for me? There's some levels to that make me a little uncomfortable, but I'm kind of conservative towards AI. But you can use it to kind of get a vague outline, and then go in with deeper in-country research to see how accurate was my AI customer model.
I guess it gives you a structure, doesn't it? And kind of it almost gets you to the starting blocks, because if it is if the research comes back is an absolute no because of reasons X, Y, and Z, then you're not going to even start, are you? Whereas if it's like, okay, here are your priority top 3, at least you've then got something to play with. Whereas, if I was looking to break into, I don't know, a Southern America country, I mean, I would not, off the top of my head, I have never served South America with my services. So I would not know where to begin without starting that research. And I guess a lot of people, a lot of marketers, business owners wouldn't know those starting blocks. So at least it gets you to the line, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And if you use AI as kind of what question should I ask next, I think that's a great way to leverage it for research purposes. Say I'm thinking about going to South America. Let's pick a South American country. Let's say maybe Argentina. Is Argentina a good fit for my product or service? Hey, AI, here's my product or service. Tell me about that product or service in Argentina. It'll give you all that information. And then you can go further and ask it refining questions. Eventually, you will get sources from your AI research where you go, a government entity. That's a great place for me to ask some questions. Oh, a customer survey. Great place for me to ask some questions. Oh, a polling company. Great place for me to ask some questions. So from these resources that eventually get uncovered, you can go from AI's generalized, here's my best guess, to drilling down to the specifics that you need for your specific offering.
This is nice because we're starting to build some layers here, aren't we? We've got this at the very high level. It's like, oh, my vision is to go global. Okay. Next level down is, okay, I need to kind of probably rationalize some continents. Okay. Broken that down. Then it's down to, okay, let's just test out a few in these target continents. And so we're going kind of at each level, each layer, we're going one step deeper, aren't we? So we've now got to a point where we've probably maybe critiqued one country that seems to fit. So I mean, let's say it's Argentina. So it fits. It's not a country that we know well as a business, but we've now got some data, some government survey or whatever it is data. right, we're now at the starting blocks. Is it at that point that you would then say, as a marketer, business owner, okay, I need to be talking now to somebody like Christina because I've got this kind of foundation built, but I haven't yet built my house? Is that the kind of a good starting point?
That's a great start, to reach out to local market experts. You may have, I'm going to call them integration points in your country. So you may have an embassy from that country in your country. So you can go over to the embassy and talk to them, and you might have a development partnership. Sometimes countries are actually actively looking for foreign direct investment. They want you to build a plant in their country or start an office in their country. They really want you to do that. So there may be offices available for you to ask your business and economic questions of, hey, how realistic is it? How much would it cost for me to start a local office in Rio de Janeiro? And those are things that probably will be surfaced in AI conversations. And you can even ask AI directly, hey, are there development initiatives for this country or that country? And the more that you talk to folks who either represent the country or are in the country, the more resources you're going to get. So whether there are tax rebates or local chambers of commerce that can help you, or financial incentives for countries, states, or localities that are looking for, international expansion to diversify their economy. Those are all potential options that you'll find when you start talking to people.
That's a really powerful layer, that one, isn't it? Because at that level, then you might actually then start to get not only these local kind of business relationships going, but potentially this funding, all these grants, or this kind of, flow of cash that might start coming in. So I think a lot of people will be thinking, no, it's about customers, but actually it's about building that local infrastructure, isn't it? And including funding, because there's resource there. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's not a blanket guarantee, but I know that Las Vegas is actively looking for international businesses and international cooperations. Certain areas in Germany are much more active about soliciting international funding or exporting German companies abroad. There's a national initiative for foreign industry, and then there's different German states also have their own initiatives. So Berlin is pretty good with that. I'm pretty sure Bavaria has their own as well. So you might not have been thinking about that when you're thinking, hey, I'm going to expand. But you can always ask. And if the answer is no, well, that's fine. You're still where you were before. But if you say, hey, I want to set up a manufacturing plant because I realize I cannot, it doesn't make sense for me to ship my product halfway around the world when you have certain maybe resources locally. Or I get parts from China and assemble locally here in my home country. Why would I send parts from China here locally when I could send parts from China to another location? So if you're in Europe, you send your parts to a manufacturing facility in the Americas, so they don't go to Europe and then back to America. But you want some control over quality. You don't necessarily want to have it manufactured in China. Well, maybe I can look at a Mexican manufacturing facility, or maybe I have it assembled in the US in a low cost of living state that's looking for investment, like Georgia or Mississippi, or some of these Bible Belt states don't have a lot of industry. So you see plants coming in there. So if you are ready in your business to do that, that's an option. But having a office, at least a virtual office, is really helpful from a marketing perspective, because then you can, in your marketing materials, brand yourself as a local company and have a local address and a local phone number with the corresponding country code. And then your customers all of a sudden feel like, it's not from way over there. They're actually just down the street. Whether you have a full office or just a virtual one, it is a way to build local credibility.
It does. It gives that level of confidence, doesn't it? Even before you start to think about, okay, what content, because we were here to talk about content, but there's so many building blocks before we get to that, aren't there, to do this right? Because you could be just otherwise pushing content locally out to the world and nobody's listening. Whereas actually by putting these little steps into place first, you've at least got then a channel, if we were to call it that, into the local audience, into via your kind of local office with the funding, the resources, the partners locally, and of course the knowledge and intelligence of that market, because those are going to be people that you've tapped into who can kind of give you that kind of local access, not only to the customers, but also the little nuances of the way you then communicate with that audience. So they're going to be invaluable. It's almost like they're an extension of your business.
100%. 100%. The folks that I have talked to in kind of the business development, international outreach type stuff, we want your business to succeed, and we want you to succeed locally with us. Because if you succeed with us in our neighborhood, we grow, you grow, everybody, your customers get a new option. It's win-win. So it's not required, but man, does it make things easier if you have some local partners who can carry the water for you. Some local partners will go out and do in-person marketing. They'll help you coordinate any events that you want to run. Las Vegas is the home of many trade shows. So if you're coming to the US for a trade show and you have a local US partner, all of a sudden, all the things that go into a trade show get a whole lot easier, because your partner can help you. Oh, we need a pop-up banner because ours broke. We want a TV and we don't want to bring one over from Europe because it's silly, because it's different electricity. We need some flyers printed. We could bring our ones from Europe, but they're A4 and US is on letter size. No US customer is not going to do business with you because you gave them an A4 piece of paper instead of a letter. We're not that we're not that close-minded. But instead of bringing over your existing collateral and having to worry about carrying that in your luggage and all that, your local partner can print things for you optimized for a US audience or a South American audience or an Asian audience or a Southern European audience, maybe that you don't access it. So it is really helpful to have a partner that you can work with and can help you out, introduce you to movers and shakers, and try and find solutions on your behalf.
I'm always a big advocate of kind of almost starting doing like pilot studies. So maybe starting with one country, understanding that process of creating this model with one example, and then maybe scaling it out. But just the way that you described there, I was kind of seeing how that felt when you described somebody in Asia, somebody in Southern America, maybe sort of, you know, other kind of Europe and other continents are available. And it kind of felt, okay, once I've done it once, then I can literally just roll the model out elsewhere. It didn't feel like a huge barrier because the process is the same. The local contact's obviously different. And what we're going to come on to in just a second, the content is clearly going to be very different. But the process, this is the important bit, isn't it? The process is going to be very similar. Have I got that right?
Yeah. And I recommend doing one expansion at a time. So if you're in the UK and you say, I'm interested in continental Europe, it's close by, transit of goods and services is relatively easy. Let's start with maybe the Netherlands, because they speak a lot of English. I know I'm going to have to market in Dutch, but getting there is going to be easier. So you say, okay, Netherlands first. You conquer the Netherlands. Excellent. You're going to learn things along the way. You're going to make mistakes in your international expansion. It's going to happen. If you start with one country or one culture first, you make all those mistakes and you learn and you know, okay, I don't do that next time. I don't do that next time. Okay, I've got my product certified for the EU now. Okay, great. I'm going to start with the Netherlands and I'll learn from there. And then we can look at expanding. And then we can maybe take on a cluster of countries that all speak the same languages. So if you start in the Netherlands, you start with Dutch. Maybe then you move to Belgium and France, because all you have to do is add French. But Belgian customers and French customers are different from Dutch customers. So you still have to do that ideal client profile for that market and or culture. But when we get into the content part, when you're writing content, a lot of times there are some underlying cultural assumptions that you don't realize until you send it to translation. And your translator comes back with, we don't have an IRS, or we don't have a National Health Service for the UK. Do you want me to translate IRS or NHS? Or do you want me to substitute our local tax thing or our local healthcare scheme? Well, our taxes don't work like that, and our healthcare system doesn't work like that. So really, we kind of have to rewrite the whole thing. If you do your research first, then you can say, aha, I've entered into the Netherlands. Their healthcare system works this way. I'm expanding to Belgium and France. The French healthcare system works this other way. All right. When I talk to a translator or localization person, I can give them a better brief and say, hey, we sell disposable needles to be in the healthcare system. We sell disposable needles. Here's all the things that are pertinent to our product. Please make sure that you frame this in a way that makes sense for your country's medical system.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because it kind of sort of gets on. We're talking content now, so let's just keep going with this flow of content, because we had to get there, because this is the layer that I guess a lot of people are thinking now is like, okay, I've got that there's a process, and I'll need to probably rewind and listen to this kind of thing to build up those levels of process in terms of the research and getting the partners, etc. But actually, what I really wanted to know is, how do I talk to this other audience that I never knew before? So we've kind of now started on this little journey into content. I mean, is it a case of you do your kind of SEO research and then you just kind of build from there, or is there kind of more complexity?
I am an SEO expert, so I start with SEO, but I do my keyword research first. Now with AI search, you're not just looking at keywords, excuse me, you're looking at queries. And some people will ask, well, how is AI search different from traditional search? There are differences, but the core concept of what you need to always keep in mind is that you need to write for your ideal client profile. You then need to make that writing accessible for bots, whether it's a traditional search bot or whether it's an AI bot. So the content creation piece needs to engage a human reader. As much as agentic purchasing, AI purchasing is coming, not there yet. So we're still writing for humans. And we're writing for a very specific cluster of humans that have a need, a cultural background, and you have a solution for them. So the question is, if you have your existing content. You have your existing content. How much does that apply to the additional target profile that you're writing for? And if it applies 99%, then you can look at straight up translation. You can look at AI translation with a human proofreader to keep the costs low. So what situation would that apply? In the US, if you are an English-speaking business and you want to market to the Hispanic market, the Spanish-speaking market, in the US, almost 20% of the US speak Spanish as their first language now. Here in Las Vegas, it's a third of our population speaks Spanish as their first language. In certain areas of California, it's like 60, 75%. In Miami, it's somewhere around like 80 or 90, I think. So for US businesses who have a default of English, depending on where you are, this might be a really interesting avenue to pursue. And the nice thing is you don't have to change currencies. You don't have different governmental institutions. US citizens who speak Spanish also have to deal with the IRS. So there, the alignment is very high. So you can look at just, okay, we're going to translate this, straight translate. We're going to have confidence if we use a human translator, we're going to have confidence that they're going to culturally adjust certain things. We'll let them know that in our brief. And then you get back something where you're like, okay, this looks really good. It has the right keyword density. It hits the pain points that our consumers are experiencing. And it makes sense for a native speaker. Great, off we go. However, if a US company wanted to market to Mexico instead of US citizens who happen to speak Spanish, the difference between the ideal client profile in the US and the ideal client profile in Mexico is going to be higher. Mexico doesn't have an IRS. They have a different tax body. So how does that impact people's pain points for a tax preparation company? The US is really weird in how we do our taxes, a big industry. In Germany, there is no tax preparation industry because they do their taxes more efficiently. That's not a joke, although it sounds like one. It's not. It's just they do it right the first time and you don't have to file a return. So, or you do, but it's not this thing. I don't know what it's like in Mexico. My guess is Mexico is going to be a little bit more efficient than the US. We have just a weird history with taxes. But it's going to be different than the US. So if you are a tax preparation company, if you are an accountant, and you are looking to market to Mexican customers, Mexican businesses, you're going to have to adapt your content to be different than what you send to US customers. So figuring out that difference means you're probably not going to straight translate. There's a few approaches to this. You could try to write something in English specifically for the Mexican market and hope that you got it right. Or you find a talented writer who also understands enough English and you let them transcreate. And what happens there is you spec out an article just like you would for your native language content. So you create an outline, you set your target audience, you include any specific things that you have. You want call outs, you want calls to action in certain places, all of that writing that you would give a writer in your native language. You write it in English, you spec it out in English, but you say, hey, make this appropriate for your country. And please write this in your native language. And you give it to your trans creator. when I write those kind of briefs, I always give them and include, here's points A, B, and C that we need to cover. Also include anything that is relevant for this demographic or client profile that I haven't covered in my outline. So if I say we need to talk about speed, reliability, and cost, and I say anything else that you think is pertinent, and they say, actually, environmentalism is very important. Aha! Here, let me give you information on our sustainability practices. And then the writer can write you a custom piece that speaks to your audience, carries your brand messaging, and is uniquely adapted to convert those clients.
So when you're talking about customization and unique adaptation there, just to use the two phrases that you've used there, is this really the benefit of, well, we're hearing this word personalization. We hear it a lot in marketing and, well, in business in general right now. You know, everybody's trying to personalize the whole experience. Is this kind of what we're talking about here, really, when it comes to content?
So this is one level before personalization. You can add additional personalization elements, but this is adapting to a culture, and then it's much more easy to personalize once you've got the bulk of the writing optimized for the culture. And if you personalize, make sure you talk to your language professional, because formality is a thing in many countries, where in the US, you may say, hey, Neil. In Japan, if you say, hey, Neil, in Japanese to somebody who you have never met, the likelihood of you getting a positive response is not good, because there are much more formal forms of address that are expected, especially in business environments. So instead, you open with a Mr. Wilkins. So even in things that you think, oh, we just need to personalize, we'll put in first name and we're done. Well, okay, all of a sudden you've spent all of this effort into crafting this amazing piece, and then you undid it all because you didn't just call your language professional and say, hey, we're going to add personalization. And they say, make sure it's the formal tone. Or you're going to Australia, make sure it's the most informal tone you can possibly hit.
So, this is the power of stereotyping, isn't it? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I can't stereotype, but it's absolutely essential here, isn't it? For the right reasons. This is not about stereotyping for the wrong reasons. This is about so we can make things more personal and relevant. So in this regard, and I'm so pleased to hear you say it, Christina, because I've been banging this drum for a long time, is that as long as the intention is right, stereotyping is a good thing.
Is it stereotyping? I say, ask your language professional. Hey, we're targeting this specific group in Japan or in Germany. Like, we are targeting 18 to 24-year-olds in Japan. Question, do they need the formal form of address? If we're going to personalize this email that you've just drafted for us, how should we address them? So then it's not stereotyping, actually. It's saying, hey, you're the expert. Tell us how your culture actually behaves, instead of what we assume your culture is like. And if they say, hey, for this demographic, you should use this form of address, call them by their first name. Don't call them by their first name. Make sure that you include a title if they have a title.
So that's the key word that you've just said.
The stereotype is, okay, Japanese are formal, we always have to use a title and last name. But you check with your language professional and they say, yeah, here you do have to do that because you are selling medical equipment to doctors' offices. You absolutely have to be as formal as possible. Okay, you are selling slushies to kids. Here's the form of address that I suggest you use. And it's something different.
So the key here is assumption, isn't it? Because you've used the word a couple of times there, and I just wanted to hook into that because that's the important thing. If we assume, we run the risk of making the wrong decision. But actually, if we've got that evidence, it is going to be the evidence, isn't it, of the local market that helps the reliable, confident decision making of the route you're going to take. Assumptions are out of the window here. They're not part of this strategy at all, are they?
No, here in the US, we say, assume. You break that down into 3 little sections. Can I swear on this podcast?
Go on, gently.
Assume makes an ass of you and me. And that applies to your internal audience as well as any foreign audiences that you may be working with, right? If you assume that your audience is okay with X or Y and you pursue X or Y, and then all of a sudden your audience backlashes. So never take your market, your audience for granted, even in your home country, in your home market, especially with international or non-native markets to you.
Can we put a timeline on this kind of process? We've been building this process in our conversation, haven't we? Is there a kind of like a rough timeline? Because somebody listening to this who has only ever served a local market, but they're now thinking, do you know, I want a piece of this action. It feels achievable because if I'm going to get support, if there's AI research I can do, there's people like Christina around to help me kind of and guide me when we're trying to roll this out. If I could do that, that would be the next possible thing that I could do, which would be to actually kind of build a plan around this. So is there a kind of I guess a minimal kind of project timeline that we could be working to? What would that be roughly, would you say?
I'd say give yourself 6 months to get all the ducks in a row. You might be able to do it in a much shorter time frame. You might be able to do it in a month or 2 if you have the right help. If you contact your local investment offices, your governmental institutions that want to help you export. The U.S. has the U.S. Commercial Service. Their mission is to help U.S. businesses export. There may be a similar function in your country, wherever you are. If you're in the UK, if you're in Canada, if you're in Australia, if you're in Hong Kong, there may be an office that helps businesses export. And they may be able to fast track you and introduce you to a lot of those local connections where you say, hey, I'm in the UK, I'm looking to go to the Netherlands. Maybe the UK has an export office, and you go in there and you say, hey, I'm looking to enter the Dutch market. And they say, hey, here's our portfolio on Dutch research. Here's some connections. All of that may be there. It may not. So the more focus that your local resources have on exporting, even if you're a knowledge worker, right? You're a consultant, you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're a marketing consultant. There are resources to help you spread that knowledge. But it's not, I'm just going to translate my stuff and launch. Well, you can do that. You can absolutely just translate your stuff and launch and see what happens. Instead of doing that, though, if you want fast results, is to do one very specific campaign. Very tailored, very small, very clear, very direct. So you have one landing page, you have an email funnel that goes out to the person who goes to this landing page to encourage a conversion. And if you happen to have somebody on staff who speaks the language, you build it to loop in that person as well. So you can build very small, light campaigns to test a market out with minimal commitment. And in some situations, you may have somebody on your team already who speaks the target language. For US businesses, you might have a Spanish speaker already on your team, and you might not know it. So if you ask and offer them some appropriate compensation to take on this task, hey, we're going to do a landing page with a small ad campaign and see what happens. Would you be able to take on these leads and talk to them? That is a possibility. With virtual assistants, you might be able to find folks in different countries who also speak a language who can run that kind of response for you. If you are targeting Asian markets, virtual assistants might be a really great resource for you. European markets, maybe not so much. A little harder to get that like language familiarity combination to labor markets that have really low costs. Although you might be able to outsource to Eastern Europe. So we've kind of built this structure of do your research, find a language professional, translate, get sales. That might not, and that's probably a 3 to 6 month process at a minimum. If you want something fast, keep it very limited, very goal-oriented, very, very specific to solve a very clear problem in that community. And then you can keep it inexpensive and see if there's a response and a positive response. So it's a little test balloon type campaign.
Which sounds a really pragmatic way of approaching this, because, for some people, 6 months, oh no, I can't possibly do that. And I haven't got the time or the resource to be able to kind of forge those partnerships. I just want to dip my toe in the water and see whether there could be something. If I get a sniff of interest, then we'll go there. So there's a nice pragmatic kind of quick piece of dirty kind of research. And then there's the fuller kind of layered plan that we've been talking about. Christina, this has been just so useful. And I'm sure everybody's kind of really chomping at the bit now to try and get to kind of starting their kind of probably AI research to kick things off. If somebody wanted to contact you for kind of further advice, guidance, and maybe sort of get you on board to help, how should they contact you?
My email address is info@Manzanita, MKTG. That's man, Zan, Z, or Z as in zebra, ANITA, MKTG, M as in Mary, K as in kite, T as in Thomas, G as in George.com. Website is also manzanitamktg.com. Socials, Manzanita MKTG on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So very accessible. I'm happy to do, for me, early morning meetings with European clients. For Europeans, that's usually like the last slot on your calendar. Save that for me. Your 4 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m. That's the best time for me to meet.
Wonderful.
So very excited to work with European clients, South American clients, U.S. clients who are looking to get into the Spanish-speaking realm in the U.S. or who are looking to export to Europe specifically.
Wonderful. Christina, thank you so much for your guidance and wisdom, and we've got ourselves a little framework here, haven't we, to share? So that's brilliant. Now, really enjoyed the conversation, and just, yeah, you've just really got me thinking about the possibilities, even for my own little micro business. So thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, Neil. Thank you so much for having me on.